you. Mr. Secretary, thank you for your presence here today. I'm a new member of this subcommittee, and I have appreciated the conversations that I've heard between my colleagues and you today. In regard to ISIL or ISIS, whatever phrase, title you want to use, I consider it one of the greatest threat our country faces at the moment. I think it's, when I say at the moment, it's today, but it's in the future as well. And I'm always worried that presidents, not just this one, but administrations have the habit of downplaying the risks. And you know, we haven't declared war in this country since World War II. We sometimes ask Congress for authorizations of use of force. And in this particular case, the request for an authorization of use of force, it seems to me, diminishes the threat by its narrowness of scope. And I want to have you reassure me how serious the threat is to our country, and that the goal here is to make certain that the American people and our leaders, us in Congress, you in the administrations to follow, have the support of the American people to see that they're successful in accomplishing the goal of defeating this threat. And I just want to encourage the administration in no way to diminish by narrowing the resolution, by talking about a certain group of countries, scope, in boots on the ground terminology, in enduring, and using the phrase enduring. Make certain that we have the American people. I'm not a veteran. I grew up with Vietnam in the back of my life. And it seemed to me that something we should have learned from Vietnam is that we understate. First of all, Mr. Secretary, I would say that one of the things I learned from Vietnam is always to respect those who served, and I respect your service to our country. Secondly, I would say that we should have learned that the American people need to be told the truth from the very beginning and how difficult the task is to succeed. And any time we downplay that, we run the risk of the American people moving on before the task is accomplished.
Well, Senator Moran, it's a very good question, and you're absolutely correct in your judgment about not losing focus. So let me try to emphasize as much as I can without hyperbole and certainly without, intimidating people. This is the challenge of a generation. This is our challenge, no question about it. But it's not just the challenge that, as I was saying a moment ago, of the kinetic, the military component of this. It's a bigger challenge than that. You've got to also address the draining of the pool for the future recruits, and that's the only way you win this, is comprehensively. So it is more than just the kinetic piece. Now, in context of the kinetic piece and declaring war, we have not declared war using against another state since World War II. To take ISIS and elevate it and make it into sort of state status would be a huge mistake. The President is not asking for a declaration of war here because we don't need a declaration of war, and it would be bad policy to have one. But he is asking for us to take this as absolutely seriously as it deserves to be. This is a threat. They have already threatened us. They have threatened Western allies of ours. They've threatened non-Western allies of ours. They have threatened the world with their vision of what they want to, how they want to live and how they want to impose their life on other people. They destroy schools. They destroy books. They rape young girls. They sell people into slavery. They cut off heads in public. They burn people alive. This is a horrendous step backwards in the context of the world's march towards civility and rule of law. And every one of us understands that. And that's why President Obama is so committed. That's why we had the summit here. That's why we've put together 60 nations. That's why young men and women in uniform are once again at risk in an effort to take on this fight. But it doesn't require a declaration of war for us to do what we need to do. And much of what we need to do is outside of the normal parameters of, quote, war. It is addressing why people don't have a greater stake or greater assimilation into their community, why they don't have other opportunities, why they're seduced by the internet by this. How do we block that? How do we counter it? How do we message it? And those are why we have 5 principal avenues of strategy. One is the military and kinetic. Another is the anti-foreign fighter movement. The third is the anti-funding, preventing them from getting funded. The fourth is the humanitarian piece, where we are the largest contributor to taking care of the people displaced in Syria and elsewhere. And the fifth is the foreign, not the foreign fighter, but the, what did I leave out? Cut off? The ideology. We're doing the major messaging across the globe, but principally in the Middle East, where we are now gearing up with huge numbers of people engaged in the effort to deal with social media, counter-message, and galvanize the global religious community, all faiths, to begin to help speak out, but particularly from Islam itself.
Mr. Secretary, thank you. Let me ask a different line of question, a different question. I've been involved in a number of efforts to demonstrate the opposition of members of the Senate to the Arms Trade Treaty. Despite that opposition by the Senate, by both Republicans and Democrats in somewhat significant numbers, in insignificant numbers, the administration negotiated that agreement. It was a previous secretary, but now 17 months later, that treaty has not been submitted to the Senate. I'm interested in knowing what is preventing or stopping that submission to the Senate, if it's ever going to happen, and in the absence of being submitted to the Senate, is there operational plans in which the administration believes that that arms trade treaty is applicable even in the absence of Senate approval? And I would also ask why a full legal review has never been done by the State Department of that treaty.
The question was, is it applicable?
In the absence of Senate ratification of that treaty, does the State Department, the administration, intend to use it as an operable document, meaning something, despite no confirmation of the Senate?
Let me get back to you on that, because honestly, I haven't had a conversation that has suggested there's a reason for why it isn't specifically, but let me find out. I'll come back to you.
Mr. Secretary, thank you.
Mr. Secretary, you've been